A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic. Those who vote decide nothing. Those who count the vote decide everything. Education is a weapon whose effect depends on who holds it in his hands and at whom it is aimed. This creature softened my heart. A stone she died, and with her died my last warm feelings for humanity. It is not heroes that make history, but history that makes heroes. Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. History has shown there are no invincible armies. I believe in only one thing: the power of the human will. It is difficult for me to imagine what personal liberty is enjoyed by an unemployed person who goes about hungry and cannot find employment. Real liberty can exist only where exploitation has been abolished, where there is no oppression of some by others, where there is no unemployment and poverty, where a man is not haunted by the fear of being tomorrow deprived of work, of home, and of bread. Only in such a society is real and not paper personal and every other liberty possible. And when there's a person, there's a problem. When there's no person, there's no problem. Quantity has a quality all its own. You cannot make a revolution with silk gloves. Gratitude is an illness suffered by dogs. Music's a good thing. It calm the beast and the man. People who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. The Pope, how many divisions has he got? In the Soviet Union, it takes more courage to retreat than advance. The only real power comes out of a long rifle. Take some exercise. Try to recover a look of a human being. If Stalin was such a bad guy, why do all these people who have to resort to attributing to him almost entirely quotes he didn't make or manipulate his actual quotes just enough to make them seem evil? A razzle dazzle purple snapple. It doesn't matter how many people vote, only who counts them. When the Bolsheviks came to power, they were soft and easy with their enemies. We had begun by making a mistake. Leniency towards such a power was a crime against the working classes. That soon became apparent in the Soviet army. It takes more courage to retreat than advance. We don't let them have ideas. Why would we let them have guns? History shows that there are no invincible armies. Undoubtedly, our path is not of the easiest, but just as undoubtedly, we are not to be frightened by difficulties. Paraphrasing from the well-known words of Lufer, a Russian might say, here I stand on the frontier between the old capitalist world and the new socialist world. Here on this frontier, I unite the efforts of the proletarians of the West and of the peasantry of the East in order to shatter the old world. May the God of history be my aid. If there are no isolated phenomena in the world, if all phenomena are interconnected and interdependent, then it is clear that every social system and every social movement in history must be evaluated not from the standpoint of eternal justice or some other preconceived idea. He is not infrequently done by historians, but from the standpoint of the conditions which gave rise to that system, that social movement, and with which they are connected. Advance toward socialism cannot be built because the exploiting elements to resist the advance and the resistance of the exploiters cannot but lead to the inevitable sharpening of the class struggle. Iron discipline does not preclude presupposes criticism and contest of opinion within the party. Least of all does it mean that discipline must be blind. On the contrary, iron discipline does not preclude but presupposes conscious and voluntary submission, for only conscious discipline can be a truly iron discipline. I consider it completely unimportant who in the party will vote or how, but what is extraordinarily important is this: who will count the votes and how plow. I believe in the only thing, the power of the human will. There are on occasions, as we know, when resources are abundant, but they are expended so incompetently that the advantage is nullified. It is difficult for me to imagine what personal liberty is enjoyed by an unemployed, hungry person. True freedom can only be where there is no exploitation and oppression of one person by another, where there is not unemployment, and where a person is not living in fear of losing his job, his home, and his bread spent spent and again to off pop of my head. The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic. I am not a millionaire son, but I make my son become a millionaire son by Jocelyn. Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. Education is a weapon whose effect depends on who holds it in his hands and at whom it is aimed. History shows that there are no invincible armies and that there never have been. Principles triumph. They do not compromise. Rhyme. Writers are the engineers of the human souls. Speakers are the engineers of the human souls. The power of the Slavic people is in the strength and determination of their women, but having developed productive forces to a tremendous extent. Capitalism has become enmeshed in contradictions which it is unable to solve by producing larger and larger quantities of commodities and reducing their prices. Capitalism intensifies. Competition ruins the mass of small and medium private owners. Stalinism, dictatorship forever, converts them into proletarians and reduces their purchasing power, with the result that it becomes impossible to dispose of commodities produced. On the other hand, by expanding production and concentrating millions of workers in huge mills and factories, capitalism lends the process of production of social character, and thus undermines its own foundation, inasmuch as the social character of the process of production demands the social ownership of the means of production, yet the means of production remain private capitalist property, which is incompatible with the social character of the process of production. These irreconcilable contradictions between the character of the productive forces and relations of productions make themselves felt in periodical cries of overproduction when the capitalists finding no effective demand for their goods owing to the ruin of the mass of the population which they themselves have brought about are compelled to burn products, destroy manufactured goods, suspend production, and destroy productive forces at a time when millions of people are forced to suffer unemployment and starvation, not because there are not enough goods, but because there is an overproduction of goods. Leninism as a Marxism of the era of imperialism and the proletarian revolution. To be more exact, Leninism is the theory of and tactics of the proletarian revolution in general, the theory and tactics of the dictatorship of the proletariat in particular. The point is that Marxism and anarchism are built upon entirely different principles, in spite of the fact that both come into the arena of the struggle under the flag of socialism. The cornerstone of anarchism is the individual whose emancipation, according to its tenets, is the principal condition of the emancipation of the masses, the collective body. According to the tenets of anarchism, the emancipation of the masses is impossible until the individual is emancipated. Accordingly, its slogan is everything for the individual. The cornerstone of Marxism, however, is the masses, whose emancipation, according to its tenets, is the principal condition for the emancipation of the individual. That is to say, according to the tenets of Marxism, the emancipation of the individual is impossible until the masses are emancipated. Accordingly, its slogan is everything for the masses. Gaiety is the most outstanding feature of the Soviet Union. Ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas? Death solves all problems. No man, no problem. Theory is the experience of the working class movement in all countries. Taken in its general aspect, of course, theory becomes purposeless if it is not connected with revolutionary practices, just as practice gropes in the dark if its path is not illuminated by revolutionary theory. The theory can become a tremendous force in the working class movement if it is built up in a dissoluble connection with revolutionary practice. For theory and theory alone can give the movement confidence, the power of orientation, and understanding of the interrelation of surrounding events for it. And it alone can help a practice to realize not only how and in which direction classes are moving at the present time, but also how and in which direction they will move in the near future. None other than Lenin uttered and repeat scores of times a well-known thesis that without a revolutionary theory. There can be no revolutionary movement. The main features and requirements of the basic economic law of modern capitalism might be formulated roughly in this way: the securing of the maximum capitalist profit through the exploitation, ruin, and the impoverishment of the majority of the population of the given country, through the enslavement and a systematic robbery of the peoples of other countries, especially backward countries, and lastly, through wars and militarization of the national economy, which are utilized for the obtaining of the highest profits. Conspiracism, the trend that equates the burguese, into an Illuminati-like organization to see the workings of class society and its contradictions as the conspiratorial actions of the ruling class, rather than as historically and masterfully defined processes. The present system is a capitalist system. This means that the world is divided up into antagonistic camps: the camp of a small handful of capitalists and the camp of the majority of the proletarians. The proletarians work day and night. Nevertheless, they remain poor. The capitalists do not work, and nevertheless they are rich. This takes place not because the proletarians are unintelligent and the capitalists are geniuses, but because the capitalists appropriate the fruit of the labor of the proletarians, because the capitalists exploit the proletarians. Why is the fruit of the labor of the proletarians appropriated by the capitalists and not by the proletarians? Why do the capitalists exploit the proletarians and not vice versa? Because the capitalist system is based on commodity production. Here, everything assumes the form of a commodity everywhere, and the principle of buying and selling prevails. Here you can only buy not only articles of consumption, not only food products, but also the labor power of men, their blood, and their consciousness. The capitalists know all of this and purchase the labor power of the proletarians. They hire them. This means the capitalists become the owners of the labor power they buy, but proletarians, however, lose their right to the labor power which they have sold. That is to say, what is produced by the labor power no longer belongs to the proletarians. It belongs only to the capitalists and goes into their pockets. Labor power which you have sold may produce in the course of the day goods up to the value of 100 rubles, but that is not your busyness. Those goods do not belong to you. It is the busyness only of the capitalists, and the goods belong to them. All that you must receive is your daily wage, which perhaps may be sufficient to satisfy your essential needs if, of course, you live frugally. It has been set above the language as a means of intercourse between the people of a society, serves of all classes of society equally, and in this respect displays what may be called an indifference to class people, to various social groups. The classes are far from being indifferent to language. They strive to utilize the language in their own interest, to impose their own special lingo, their own special terms, their own special expressions upon the upper strata of the propertied classes, who have divorced themselves from the and detest the people, the aristocratic nobility, the upper strata of the bourgeois. The bourgeois are particularly distinguished themselves in this respect. Class dialects, jargons, high society languages are created bourgeois in a contradistinction of the proletarian language, or the present language. For this reason, strange as it may seem, some of our comrades have come to the conclusion that national language is a fiction, and that only class languages exist in reality. History teaches us that the class or social group which plays the principal role in social production and performs the main functions in the production must, in the course of time, inevitably take control of that production. Oppose conspiracism, translate our analysts into the popular language of the masses, when engage in dialogue, work with the masses directly and openly, build ties to the localities in which one operates. The people who cast the vote decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. The present system is a capitalist system. This means that the world is divided up into two antagonistic camps, rapping again and again, spitting intellectually a set. Let's see what we have here. In the north, we have everything in order, and normal Finland has given away to us, and we pushed the frontier up from Leningrad, the Baltic region, which consists of truly Russian lands, and yours and ours again. All the Belarusians are now living with us, and so are the Ukrainians and the Moldavians. Everything's normal in the west. Span hence the meth, oppose academicism, reassure ourselves of the revolutionary popular character of Marxism, Leninism, engage the masses in a revolutionary education that allows the understanding of Marxism, emphasize the importance of praxis rather than isolated theory of practice. It's been rapping. It has said above that language is a means of intercourse between the people of society. Rap monopoly, the only thing anyone inherits by right of birth in the Soviet Union is congenital idiocy. Imbecile imperialism carries the contradictions of capitalism to their last bounds, to the extreme limit beyond which revolution begins. Of these contradictions, their free wish must be regarded as the most important. Marxism is the science of the laws, governing the develop of nature and society, the science of the revolution of the oppressed and exploited masses, the science of the victory of socialism in all countries, the science of building a communist society. It's been monopoly, floppity for all of eternity, dictatorship, quality, my ideology, knowledge of thee. I have dictatorship, infinite knowledge of thee. A man is not by nature deserving of all that he wants. When we think that we are automatically entitled to something, that is when we start walking all over others to get it. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes a revolution in order to establish a dictatorship. Withholding information is the essence of tyranny. Control of the flow of information is the tool of the dictatorship. I sit in one of the dives on 52nd Street, uncertain and afraid as the clever hopes expire of a low and dishonest decade. Waves of anger and fear circulate over the bright and darkened lands of the earth, obsessing our private lives. The unmentionable odor of death offends the September night. Accurate scholarship can unearth the whole offense from Lucifer until now that has driven a culture mad. Find what occurred at Linz, what huge Imago made a psychopathic God. I and the public know what all school children learn. Those to whom evil is done do evil in return. Exiled, few sides knew all that a speech can say about democracy and what dictators do. The elderly rubbish they talk to a apathetic grave. Analyzed all in this book. Spoken of the enlightenment driven away. The habit, form, and pain, mismanagement, and grief. We must suffer them all again into this neutral air where blind skyscrapers use their full height to proclaim the strength of collective man. Each language pours its vain, competitive excuse, but who can live for long in a euphoric dream out of the mirror they stare. Imperialism's face and the international wrong face along the bar, clean to their average day. The lights must never go out. The music must always play. All the conventions conspire to make this fortunes assume the furniture of home, lest we should see where we are, lost in a haunted wood. Children afraid of the night, who have never been happy or good. The windiest militant trash. Important persons shout is not so crude as our wish. What Mad wrote about is true of the normal heart, for the era bred in the bone of each woman and each man craves what it cannot have, and not universal love, but to be loved alone, from the conservative dark into the ethical life. The dense commuters come repeating their morning vow. I'll be true to the wife. I'll concentrate more on my work, and helpless governors wake to resume their compulsory game. Who can release them now? Who can reach the dead? Who can speak for the dumb? All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie, romantic lie in the brain of the sensual man in the street, and the lie of authority. Respect my authority of dictatorship monopoly, whose buildings grope the sky. There's no such thing as the state. And no one exists alone. Hunger allows no choice to the citizen or the police. We must love one another or die, defenseless under the night. Our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere. Ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them, of euros and of dust, be leaguered by the same negation and despair, showing an affirming flame within a system which denies the existence of basic human rights. Fear tends to be the order of the day. Fear of imprisonment, fear of torture, fear of imprisonment, fear of torture, fear of death, fear of losing friends, family, property, or means of livelihood, fear of poverty, fear of isolation, fear of failure. A most insidious form of fear is that which masquerades as common sense or even wisdom, condemning it as foolish, reckless, and insignificant or futile. The small daily acts of courage which help to preserve man's self-respect and inherent human dignity. It is not easy for a people conditioned by fear under the iron rule of the principle that might is a right to free themselves from the enervating miasma of fear, even under the most crushing state machinery. Courage rises up again and again to off top of my head. I'm spitting, rapping, speaking again, for fear is not the natural state of a civilized man. When we're afraid, we lose all sense of analysis and reflection. Our fear paralyzes us. Besides, fear has always been the driving force behind all dictators or oppression. There will be in the next generation of a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak, producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies, so that people will, in fact, have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution. Of course, during the centuries, the justice was always a rather elastic term, but always till now, and everywhere the justice is the same thing, but usefully further stronger. This acute self-dissolving contradiction Marx had very precisely seen, and foreseeing that it establishes a monopoly in certain spheres and thereby requires state interference. This contradiction reproduces anew a financial aristocracy. How much Marx was right, no matter it will call itself Communist Party or Soviet Union or a DuPont financial circle. It reproduces a new variety of parasites, a whole system of swindling and cheating by means of corporation promotion, a stock and insuance and stock speculation. If this were a dictatorship, it would be a heck of a lot easier, as long as I'm the dictator. Let's say that the consensus is that our species, being the higher primates, Homo sapiens, has been on the planet for at least 100,000 years, maybe more. Francis Collins says more, maybe 100,000. Richard Dawkins thinks maybe 250,000. I'll take 100,000. In order to be a Christian, you have to believe that for 98,000 years, our species suffered and died. Most of its children dying in childbirth. Most other people having a life expectancy of about 25 years, dying of their teeth, rhyming for eternity, infinitely.